One routine morning at the bank, one man blending into the crowd. But when the K-9 refused to let go, what they uncovered left the entire lobby frozen. What was he really hiding? Here's the full breakdown. But first, drop your favorite K-9 name in the comments and hit that subscribe button. The town of Lancaster Falls had always prided itself on routine. Predictability was baked into the bricks of its century-old buildings. It was the kind of town where coffee shop regulars ordered the same drink every morning, where kids biked home from school unbothered, and where nothing, absolutely nothing, ever happened at the local branch of Stonehaven Bank. Until Tuesday morning. It was 9 a.m. when Officer Kara Jensen stepped out of her cruiser and let her K-9 partner Rocco out of the back. Rocco was a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois, compact, lean, but with eyes that missed nothing. Trained for both narcotics and explosives, Rocco had a reputation in the county. He rarely barked unless it mattered. That morning, they were running a standard visibility patrol, the kind that made citizens feel secure and staff feel seen. Nothing more. Kara didn't even remove her sunglasses when she walked through the front doors of the bank. The cool rush of air conditioning greeted her first, then the polite nod of the security guard at the front desk. Rocco walked calmly beside her, his gait relaxed, ears casually pivoting as he scanned the lobby. The bank was busy but quiet, tellers working, papers shuffling, low murmurs between customers. A man in a gray suit was filling out a form near the check deposit kiosk. A mother was trying to calm a crying toddler in the waiting chairs. Everything looked normal, until it didn't. Without warning, Rocco stopped. He didn't sit. He didn't growl. He froze, one paw slightly forward, head tilted. Then came the first short huff from his nose, a sniff, then another. Kara turned toward him just as his entire posture changed, back lowered slightly, tail stiff, chest rising. He was scenting, intensely. His focus narrowed, locked onto one man, the man in the gray suit. Late 30s, clean cut, sharp jawline, well-fitted clothing. He hadn't noticed Rocco yet, or maybe he had and just didn't care. Rocco began to move forward, slowly, controlled. Kara tightened the leash but didn't stop him. The man looked up, and that's when everything shifted. A flicker of recognition passed over his face, too subtle for most, but not for Kara, not for Rocco. The man shifted his weight, tried to slide the form he'd been filling out into his coat pocket. Rocco barked, loud, short, focused. Then again, all heads turned. The room went quiet. The security guard began moving toward them. Kara raised a hand. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step over here for a moment." The man's jaw tensed. "No problem," he said calmly, but his eyes were already scanning. Doors, exits, people, too calmly. Kara's fingers tapped her radio as she motioned the guard to block the nearest exit. Subject ID check at Stonehaven. K-9 alert, possible concealment. Rocco barked again, pulling slightly, nostrils flaring near the man's waist. The reveal that wasn't on paper. Kara asked the man for ID. He handed it over without hesitation. It read, James Tillman, born and raised in Franklin, no prior history. But Rocco wasn't convinced. Kara asked him to open his briefcase. That's when the man hesitated, just for a second, then smiled. Of course, he knelt slowly, unlatched it, and turned it toward her. Inside, contracts, a laptop, some personal items, nothing that screamed criminal, except Rocco barked again, and then lunged slightly, not to bite, but to get closer. Not the case, the jacket. Kara stepped forward. "Take off your coat." "Really?" Rocco barked again, teeth showing this time. "Now." He slid it off. Rocco immediately moved to the inner lining, sniffed once, then pawed once. There, something sewn in. Too small to bulge, too light to clink, but definitely present. Kara reached in and found a stitched seam in the inner pocket. She tore it open. Inside was a flat black sleeve, a signal jamming device. Low-powered, designed to block short-range security radio signals. Nothing explosive, but illegal and precise. The kind of thing used in high-end robberies to knock out silent alarms, sensor triggers, or time-stamped camera footage. The man didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "Guess that's what your dog smelled, huh?" he said softly. Kara stepped back. The moment she radioed it in, the floodgates opened. Layers uncovered. Back at the station, the man was processed. But his ID was fake. Fingerprint scans revealed a different name, Elias Cordell, connected to 2 ongoing investigations in other states. Never arrested, never convicted, until now. But that was only the beginning. Inside the jacket's second lining, when searched again under UV, was a microfilm strip, encrypted. It would take the department hours to decode, but what was found first was chilling enough. A name printed on the corner of the film, S.D. Langstrom. That name was familiar. He was the head of security for Lancaster's regional transportation grid. But more importantly, he'd gone missing 2 weeks ago, and no one had found a trace until now. The questions begin to unravel. Who was Elias really working for? Why the signal jammer? And why this bank? He wasn't trying to rob it, that was clear. He was planting something, or disabling something. A quiet plan, one that almost succeeded. But one bark changed everything. Rocco paced outside the holding room, calm again, but not relaxed. Kara watched him carefully. He was still tuned in, still sensing something, because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The strip of microfilm recovered from the man's jacket was barely the size of a pinky nail, but it carried the weight of 100 questions. The tech team at the precinct worked for hours scanning, enlarging, and decrypting the embedded data. By the time the sun began setting over Lancaster Falls, one thing was clear. This wasn't about a local robbery. This was part of a plan, and the bank was just a node. Officer Kara Jensen sat in the conference room surrounded by digital forensics, senior investigators, and her canine partner Rocco. The dog rested under the table, eyes open, alert, not asleep, not relaxed. He was waiting, just like her. Across the table, the tech analyst clicked through frames of decoded data from the microfilm. "This is all communications routing," he said, "not just local. We're talking region-wide relay intercepts. Encryption level isn't consumer-grade either. This looks military." Kara leaned forward. "But what's it routing?" The analyst clicked again, and there it was. Access keys, personnel credentials, security codes, all marked with timestamps and geotags. One of the tags caught Kara's eye immediately. L Transit Hub, Terminal 3, 545, her stomach turned. That was Lancaster's main underground transit station. Terminal 3 ran the 5:45 a.m. express to New Point, a line that passed beneath every government building in the downtown corridor. And 5:45 a.m. was less than 13 hours away. She looked down at Rocco. He was already standing. At 9:02 p.m., Kara and a 3-person rapid response unit arrived at the transit station under the cover of routine inspection. They didn't alert the public. They didn't wear full tactical gear. They brought Rocco. The K-9 officer moved quickly, leading the team toward Terminal 3's employee-only service gate. There was no crowd, just a couple of janitors, one sleeping commuter, and a booth clerk busy balancing receipts. But Rocco didn't stop at the gate. He pulled right toward the wall, a janitor supply closet, and then he barked hard, 3 times in a row. His body flattened low, ears pinned back, teeth bared, not in fear, in absolute certainty. Kara stepped up, tapped on the door. No answer. She opened it slowly. At first glance, it was what it claimed to be, cleaning supplies, buckets, mops, bleach. But Rocco ignored all of that. He walked straight toward a floor panel beneath the sink, sniffed once, then sat. That was his signal. He'd found something hidden. Kara and her team pried the panel loose. Inside was a small black duffel, sealed in vacuum wrap. When they opened it, 2 items: a high-frequency signal transceiver and a backup identity badge for a rail system employee with Elias Cordell's name on it. The missing man. Still unaccounted for, still not found, but clearly part of this. Back at the station, the investigation pivoted fast. The man arrested at the bank, Elias or whatever his real name was, refused to talk. Hours passed. His silence didn't crack, but the evidence did. The badge recovered from the transit hub was marked with a strange side insignia, one that didn't match any current department or agency. It resembled something from a defunct private security firm once contracted for federal infrastructure consulting. Kara remembered the name from a previous case, Aerosync Defense Systems. The company had gone bankrupt 5 years ago after whistleblowers claimed it had used classified access to sell data. Nothing had ever been proven, but here it was again. Its signal frequency matched the one jammed by the device Rocco had alerted on inside the bank. That was the connection. The bank wasn't the target. It was the disruption point, a relay between the financial system and transport network. At 3:12 a.m., while reviewing archived security footage from a logistics hub in Newpoint, a systems operator noticed something odd. A man matching the suspect's profile had been seen entering the building 4 nights earlier, using another name, another badge, but he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, calm, unbothered, was someone wearing an official Lancaster police windbreaker, a familiar face. Kara's heart pounded as the image sharpened. It was Officer Ben Clary, an off-shift officer who had been reassigned 2 months earlier after a failed canine pairing. He hadn't been seen at work for over a week. No one had asked why. By 4:45 a.m., a warrant was issued for Ben Clary's known address. It wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom apartment in a converted warehouse loft on the industrial edge of town. Kara, Rocco, and a tactical unit arrived before dawn. No lights were on. The building seemed quiet. Rocco, however, was not. He barked the moment they stepped out of the cruiser. Short, tight barks, spaced by low, chesty growls. He pulled toward the building's side entrance, toward a door that didn't match the others. Older, warped. A service access door. Kara followed. Inside, the air smelled faintly of engine oil and dust, and underneath that, something acrid. Rocco sniffed the floor near the furnace closet, then sat down. Another alert. Kara opened the door. Inside, not a furnace. A makeshift server stack, still running, and in the center, a laptop logged in under a name no one recognized. On the screen, a map, blinking dots. A pattern of signal relay points across the state, all of them connected to Rocco's alert locations. They were tracking the dog. The realization hit hard. This wasn't a one-man operation, and it wasn't just about bank codes or identity jamming. It was about tracing interference, removing obstacles, using quiet setups in public places to test timing, test systems, and cover their tracks in real time. Rocco was not just alerting on crime. He had become the signal that exposed it, and now someone was watching him. Whatever this network was, it was not done, because on that final screen, one more message flashed before the laptop disconnected. Phase 2 activation window, 12 hours. Target, internal relay handler, code RJX. Kara didn't know what that meant yet, but she did know this. The next move wouldn't come from outside, it would come from within, and Rocco would be the only one who sensed it before it was too late. By 7 a.m., Lancaster Falls felt quiet again, but not calm. Not in the way most towns feel before the rush of the day. This kind of quiet was artificial, staged. Kara Jensen stood in the narrow hallway outside the precinct server room, her badge clipped tight to her vest. Rocco sitting beside her, tense. The image of the terminal from Officer Clary's apartment still burned in her memory. The blinking dots, the signal chains, the final coded message. Phase 2 activation window, 12 hours. Target, internal relay handler, code RJX. That last line, she had checked it. RJX was her, a shorthand version of her personnel ID. Registry Jensen X4. They had named her, and if the countdown was correct, something was about to happen now. Rocco stood up, no sound, no trigger, just instinct. And a second later, the lights flickered. Not long, just once. But it was enough. Kara tapped her radio. Dispatch, status check on station power. Are we showing any surges? No reply. She tried again. Silence. Rocco growled. 2 minutes later, A security monitor in the squad room lit up with a flagged notice. A white panel van had entered the rear garage without triggering the front gate. No ID match, no entry card swipe, but it was there, caught on a single side-angle camera parked behind the building. Kara and Rocco moved fast. No sirens, no shouting. She signaled 2 officers to cover the main exit while she circled around the east stairwell. As they turned the corner, Rocco froze, then barked once. Low, forceful. The van's rear doors were slightly ajar. Inside, empty shelves, a ventilation unit rigged into the floor, and taped to the inside panel, a printed schematic of the precinct's internal server bay. One word written in black permanent marker, loopback. The lights inside the building cut for 5 full seconds. When they came back on, half the internal systems had defaulted to backup mode. Someone was trying to erase something. Live, Kara bolted toward the server room with Rocco at her side. The door was ajar, and inside, a single man in maintenance coveralls standing at the rack with a handheld device, not panicked, not surprised, just still. He turned to face her, eyes calm. "You were faster than expected," he said softly. Kara kept her sidearm low but ready. "Back away from the system, now." The man didn't move. "You were never supposed to find the first relay," he said. "Your dog wasn't part of the probability spread." Rocco stepped forward, growling. Kara took another step. "Why the precinct?" she asked. His answer was almost a whisper. "Because the best place to hide a signal is right in the system meant to detect it." He tapped the device in his hand, and that's when Rocco lunged. The man never stood a chance. Rocco didn't bite. He tackled, knocking the device free and pinning him to the floor before Kara even shouted the command. In seconds, backup officers arrived. The device, not a detonator, but a repeater, set to wipe local data logs and reroute through a secondary ghost port, just like the ones traced back to GVC. If it had completed the sequence, all the files tied to the previous week's discovery, the bank, the subway, even Officer Clary would have disappeared from the system, and Kara, she would have been the last person logged in, the scapegoat, the handler variable they had quietly flagged weeks ago. But instead they had her, and they had Rocco. The man arrested in the server room turned out to be a former contractor for Aerosync, the same shell company flagged in the old data maps. His real name was never confirmed. All identifiers had been wiped, but fingerprints tied him to 3 different locations across 2 states, all with similar hardware wipes and systems reroutes. The FBI stepped in again. They took everything, every laptop, every router, and yet even with the arrests, even with the hard drives recovered, there were still more questions. Because in one decrypted folder found buried 3 layers deep on a backup server was a live document, a watch list, names of officers, city council members, logistics workers, and dogs. Rocco's name appeared 3 times, each time tagged with Tier 3 interference. Below his name was a final entry, Unit relocation advised. Surveillance ineffective if handler and asset are allowed continued field access. They hadn't just planned to erase the data. They planned to reassign her and Rocco, split the team, weaken the bond, so the system could move forward without the one thing that couldn't be hacked or bought, instinct. 2 days later, a plain envelope arrived at the station. No return address. Inside, a single flash drive. Kara plugged it into a secure machine. There was only one file, a video, black screen. Then words typed slowly in white. "We watch for patterns." A pause, but we missed one. Then a single image. Grainy, zoomed in. A surveillance still of Rocco standing alert outside the bank, head tilted, body tense. A line below it, "The dog breaks the model," and the screen faded to black. Kara stood outside the precinct the next evening, Rocco beside her, ears perked. There had been no sirens, no headlines, just quiet recognition, a commendation that would be filed away quietly off the books. Because the truth, it never really ended. Signals shift, names change, but one thing stayed the same. When something didn't smell right, Rocco barked, and when he barked, Kara listened. Not because the world was always watching, but because someone had to be. Even if it was just a woman and her dog standing between what was seen and what was meant to stay hidden, and that was enough. Because one bark had changed everything. If that last twist caught you off guard, just wait till you see what's coming next. These dogs don't just sniff trouble, they expose what no one else can. So hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure you're ready. You won't want to miss what the next alert uncovers.